Have you ever felt that you were being bullied? What did it feel like? On the other hand, have you ever bullied someone else? What did that feel like? It's not always easy to discern a case of bullying. Fortunately, Alain Pelletier is here to help us figure out the complexity of this issue. Alain role-plays a bullying situation from the perspective of the victim as part of the student, teacher, and parent education program he's created. Alain is a professional Canadian public speaker. Since 2008, he's given over 1,400 conferences, presentations, and workshops on the subject of bullying to over 900 schools. Our guiding question was, how can we recognize bullying? What can educators, parents, and other students do to prevent it? And how can they respond to it when it happens? Here are a few of the topics that Alain spoke to regarding bullying. He uses a role-playing skit format to connect to his audiences emotionally. His skits take his audience through the story arc of the bullying experience for students, the 5 roles that individuals might take in the bullying process. Victimization is a complex concept. When and where bullying takes place, differentiating the bully from the behavior, signs that a student is being bullied, support strategies for victims and for bullies, social networking and bullying. I think it's safe to say that Alain has helped many students to navigate this emotionally charged issue with compassion. This show was recorded on March 5th, 2024. And now, please give a warm welcome to Alain Pelletier.
Hello and bonsoir, Alain. We are super excited to have you come in and speak to this very important topic to us. And we always start the episodes with, where in the world are you? So where are you?
I'm in Quebec, the city, the province, and the province is in Canada. So I'm a Canadian citizen.
Woohoo!
Woohoo. I was waiting for that woohoo from my podcasting partner, fellow Canadian there. All right, instead of doing our usual going global story, we thought it would be very helpful for our audience if you could describe the process of the skit that you do when you go work with schools all over Canada to help increase their knowledge about bullying. So could you give just, an outline of what are the steps that you go through in your presentation?
So I have 5 speeches, and all those speeches are built the same way. They always have an impersonation of a kid, and so an acting part and a speech part. And during that presentation, the monologue part, this is where I play the role of a kid who's gonna end up defining himself as a victim as bullying. But I'm not reading the story as if I'm reading it out of a book. I'm telling the story as if I'm that kid, and I'm telling it as if it was written in the pages of a diary. So I'll start with the date and I'll say, Dear Diary, and I'll tell you the story as if I'm the kid going through that day. That allows me to generate and transmit a whole bunch of emotions. So it starts from happiness, and you kind of discover this happy-go-lucky kid, and all of a sudden he's feeling question marks, right? Is this happening to me? And I'm not sure what to do with it, right? And after a while, he gets teased, but everybody's laughing, right? But so he kind of feels bad about it, but everybody's laughing and they're saying their jokes, so they must be right. And after a while, he speaks to mom or dad, and they say, you should go talk to a teacher. But he says to himself, well, if I go see a teacher, well, they're going to just go see the kids and they're going to get in trouble. And if they get in trouble, they're going to know that I went to see them. It's going to be worse than before. So I don't want the situation to get worse. I'd like it to become better. So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do about it. So he kind of reacts exactly as a victim would, meaning he doesn't seek help elsewhere. He seeks to fix the problem by himself. And the way he does it is he expresses emotions that are not necessarily the right ones, right? And he ends up excluding himself. He hides. He doesn't eat with everybody. He doesn't talk to mom and dad anymore. And the more they don't talk to him, the more they question him. The more they question him, the more he doesn't want to talk because he can't define what's going on, right? So there's a rejection from parents and rejection from all the other kids in school as well. And at the end of the speech, he kind of says, well, I don't know what's happening to me. Why is this happening? Why are they not stopping? And the story ends with a question or a despair on why is anybody else seeing this but me? And then I go into the speech part, which I define bullying in 5 different ways, which are the bully, the victim, the bystander, the parents, and the teachers. And I always say, well, if I give them one definition, nobody's going to take that definition and own them to them, right? Because they'll say, well, they're only playing jokes, or they're just playing around, or it was just a joke, it was just a game, I didn't mean it that way. And they all have these different definition on their point of view, right? So I redefine bullying as if you're a victim. So I say, here's what you're supposed to feel, here's how you're supposed to react, here's what you're supposed to ask yourself, and here are the ways out. And then I do that for bystanders. Here's what it should like and should feel and should look like for you. And this is what happens if you're a bully. This is what bullying should look like to you. And same for parents and same for teachers. So whenever you redefine bullying in those different ways, people after that, those emotions, they kind of know what hat to wear in what situation, right? So whenever I tell that story, we all have these thoughts, or there are things that went into our minds on different things that we've been through, right? So in this particular situation, maybe you find yourself as a victim, and maybe in that situation, you know what, I found myself as a bystander in that one. But you kind of react the same way the kids or the actors in my story would react. And then I give them ways out. So this is what you should do if you're a victim. This is what you should do as a bystander, and so on. So there's an emotional understanding or definition, there's an intellectual understanding, and there's a way out. So there's a process, there's a method to the madness.
Okay, well, thank you. I watched a video that you have on your website of you doing this skit, and I was impressed at how well you were emulating how a kid might be feeling, the choices they might make, and some of the consequences, and the whole, like you say, it's this whole arc of a story of how the feelings go and, what often happens. So it leads beautifully into our guiding question, which is all about the idea, like you said, kids say, oh, I'm just joking, and so on. So, how can we recognize bullying? What can educators, parents, and other students do to prevent it? And in what ways can they respond when it happens? So, let's start with our first sub question. How would you define bullying? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the different forms that it takes.
Yeah, that's a great way to start the podcast, because I'll reference Bullying Canada in this case, because that's the website I'm asked for the most. This is why I reference, right? And they define bullying as an aggressive word or action given over a certain period of time. And it's given freely, meaning I'm a student and I'm not bugging anybody. I'm not provoking anybody. Like, people are going out of their way just to do something or say something to make me react. And that is the most gray definition that we could offer our students and our staff in our schools. Because since February 2012, they've implemented different laws and different ways that schools can and should, right? There's different actions since that date being done. And it seems like now in 2024, we're hearing a lot more of it now than we did 12, 15 years ago. And it seems like we're doing more of it. And the first problem I have with it is we defined it wrong, because that creates a whole bunch of problems, right? So all the kids, every time somebody says something mean to them or does something mean, they go running to the teacher and they say, well, blah, 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 he's bullying me, she or he is bullying me. And, well, one, they don't really understand bullying. And secondly, it creates a professional fatigue, meaning the teachers that are supervising the cafeteria or the schoolyards, all they're hearing is Madame, Monsieur, Madame, and kids yelling at them. And this is a great and interesting time of the year because they're tired. And here in Canada, the light has not started to, so our sleep patterns are not very good. It's still winter here. And so as an educator, we don't have that extra gear of patience. Like, educators, they're not mean, right? People go in education because they're mothers and fathers at heart, right? They're little pieces of jewelry that takes care of our kids. They're not mean people. And for them to say, go play elsewhere, they're thinking, they're not saying go figure it out by yourselves. They're saying to themselves, they're probably going to figure it out in 3 minutes. It's not that big a deal, right? Because 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 times, they kind of figure it out and it's okay. So they say, go play. They're not being mean. They're just being bombarded with a whole bunch of different problems. They don't know where to draw the line, or is this something that big brother said to small brother, or is this really bullying, right? Because they all seem to fit into that definition. The first thing that a teacher or a parent should ask to their kids is, how did you feel? Did you feel angry whenever they said or did this to you? Or did you feel fear? If they felt angry, that's big brother, roughing up small brother. They felt angry, they felt sad, it's fine. Your big brother, big sister are not bullies. But if they felt fear, that's the first step in order to say, you know what, maybe that's bullying. That's the first step, the first word, the first question they should ask the kid in order to say, where is that situation? How much time should I spend on this? And what's the best approach? The only difference we should have is, did you feel anger or did you feel fear? And fear is usually something that's being done in order for somebody to have social control over somebody else. That's when bullying starts, and not and something angrily or a bad word or bad game giving to somebody else. Yeah, I like that way to define bullying much more.
Okay. So it continues over a period of time and there's fear involved, are the two. So just generally feeling shamed by other kids, is that akin to fear or is that akin to anger? Like, where does that fit in?
It depends. The person should define it by themselves. It depends, right? Whenever we deal with kids, I'll say around the age of 14 and less. Like, empathy and sympathy are not emotions that are easy to understand, right? It's very hard to understand that somebody else can feel or could feel a completely different emotion I'm feeling when we're faced with the same situation. So whenever kids say, well, I'm just joking around, well, they're right. They are just joking around. They felt like they were joking around, but they don't have necessarily the ability to understand that somebody else could feel something completely different I am, right? Whenever we go over 15, 16, they understand, they know, and that's probably the time in the school systems that we see less and less of it, right? Because they understand that if I say or do something, I'm probably going to hurt them. So, and I realize this, right? So that's the time. The critical part is probably between 12 and 14 years old. That's the age group where they're finding themselves socially speaking. The parents are not the center of their universe. Their friends are now. They have to figure it out what place they find themselves in that age group, person group at school. So yeah, they're doing certain things to have social acceptance. It's not necessarily being done the good way, right?
So, just expanding on the forms, one thing I often tried to impress on students when I was teaching health was that bullying can be insidious. It is often more painful when it's emotional and social instead of physical. You think of the stereotypical, the bully is pushing you physically around or beating you up or what have you. It's social exclusion, it's the teasing and these kind of things. I think that also would be considered bullying, at least from how I understood it. What do you think about the different forms of bullying and whether those are still true today?
I agree with you. But there's a climax to that, right? So they'll start playing games, but they'll stop playing games the minute they don't have that reaction, right? That reaction is what feeds them. That's fun to them, right? Whenever the person reacts, you feel good about yourself. You created joy within yourself. So if the person doesn't react, there's two things that are going to happen, right? One, they're going to stop, which is the best case scenario, or the kids are going to do something a little meaner and a little rougher, and they'll go a step further, right, to get that reaction. But after a little while, if they stop getting those reactions, plus if they know that a teacher, every time they do or see something, they do something wrong, somebody else goes sees this teacher and they get asked about it, they'll probably stop, at least at school. But that reaction from the victim is crucial, how they deal with it, right?
Yeah, definitely. You're spot on there. And my experience was always also trying to get kids to just not react because that is exactly what they're looking for. And it sounds like you've lost, but you've actually won. And the behavior will extinguish if they don't rally you up. That's what they were hoping to do because then they feel like they have power. And if you don't respond, you've taken away their power. One other thing that I wanted to just ask you about too is My impression was also that most kids have been bullies and have been bullied at one point or another. Based on your definition, does that also ring true?
That happens a lot. They just don't know exactly how to get friends or to keep friends, right? They're just trying their best, but their ways of achieving that social connections are not being done the good way, right? I wanted to, if you don't mind me adding something to what you said earlier. We speak about when we tell our kids, well, don't react, don't react. And it's extremely easy to say, but it's extremely hard to do whenever you're that kid. And as a teacher or as a parent, the goal should be to show them how not to react. Because when you're a teacher, when you're a parent, the goal is to show them how to do them by themselves, right? I always say, whenever I speak to parents, I have a problem because I'm a father. They're my kids, and the problem with that phrase I have is that my kids are not my phone or my car or my house. They're not my possession. I gave them life, and I need, as a parent, to show them how to use that thing called life I gave them, right? That's what my role is. So when I tell them, there's a big difference between telling my kids what to do and showing my kids what to do. So to me, that there's a big difference between the two of them. So whenever we say to our students, hey, you should not react, well, okay, I understand it, but emotionally speaking, these two are definitely disconnected, right? So intellectually speaking, I understand not to react, not to react. I got this. But whenever they're faced with the situation, they kind of react and the emotion kind of takes over and says, I should have not reacted. And that's a hard dialect to have between your heart, your emotions system and your intellect. The way we do that as a parent, as a teacher, is we need to show our kids ways in order for them to feel confident in themselves. And whenever I speak to people and I meet people, they always ask me what I do for a living. And I tell them, 100% of the people that ask me that will tell me the exact same thing. Oh, I was bullied when I was a kid. And I always tell myself, well, maybe there's a big difference to me between going through or being bullied or being a victim of bullying. If you're a victim, the creases, there's still things inside of you that defines you to this day. If you felt bullying, probably you felt anger, you felt rejection, but you weren't scared of going to school at all costs, right? It didn't engage or it didn't mark something in your body or your person that defines you to this day. So there's a big difference between the two of them. It's like you can feel or go through bullying or you're a victim of bullying. So to me, the story that I tell is inspired by true events. And I always say this to people, well, I was being bullied, but I'm not a victim, meaning I had a lot of positive parental presence. My mom and dad are extremely good parents. And I was lucky enough to get things that some kids don't have. And to me, there's a clear marking. Like in 1990, to this day, I think it's the best movie in the world. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out. And I was absolutely amazed. I tell you, Audrey, when you sing a song, I could tell the whole movie. I knew every dialect. I knew everything about that movie. I could watch the movie, go to the washroom, keep saying the lines and come back and the lines would pick up as I could know that movie by heart. But then my dad, when he saw that I liked the movie, he enrolled me in karate classes. And for the first time in my life, I started to have confidence in myself. So guess what? My body started to move different. I'm not hunched over. I'm not this kid that's playing by himself in the back. I got chest now. I'm positioned way different now. And guess what happened? I stopped being teased just with my nonverbal. Wolves don't try to kill lions. They try to get sheep. And whenever we can show ways for our kids to not be sheep, I mean, and you can use that karate thing with dance, with clarinet, with whatever, right? Anything like drawing, like anything. If your kid likes it, push it. And as long as he or she can find confidence in themselves, they're going to stop to be victims of bullying, right? The goal is not to stop bullying. And we're fighting a war that can't be won. We need to stop every single time a teacher or a school is going to say to themselves, how do we stop bullying? Guess what's going to happen? They're going to try something and it's not going to work. And it's not because they're not good as a teacher or as a school. We're fighting a war that can't be won. The best thing that we can do is minimize it at 99.9%. That's the best. It did, it does, and it will always happen. Our goal as a parent, as a teacher, as a school is to show our kids ways in order for them to minimize the damage. Like, kids are going to be kids. Things are going to be said. Games are going to be games. Somebody's going to feel bad. We can't make the world unicorns and rainbows, and it's not going to happen, right? That story has been written way many times before. But if we can show our kids ways in order for them to feel confident in themselves, every little situations are not going to define them. They're not going to react. They're not going to feel as bad as it. Maybe they're going to define the situation as bullying, but they're not going to be victims. And that's a big thing that we should do as an adult, raising or showing kids as a kid or as a student, right? So the goal is not to stop bullying altogether. The goal is to minimize the damage that's being done, and that's internal towards the outside and not the outside coming in.
I mean, I love that because honestly, there are any number of adults who also see themselves as victims of one thing and another. And so that whole idea of self-confidence and having something that defines you in a more positive way that you can hang your hat on and so on, that's a wonderful message.
Yeah, like victimization to me is another topic that kind of surrounds bullying, right? Whenever we can take, like, people like to victimize themselves because they get empathy from everybody else towards them, right? They want to feel they want to feel welcome, they want to feel part of a team. So they'll verbalize something bad and something, and everybody's gonna say, wow, that happens to me. I feel so sorry about it. And that kind of feels good that somebody else understands what I'm going through, right? We all want to be understood. So that's how they do it. But after a little while, whenever you talk negative, guess what's going to happen? A lot of negative comes your way. So whenever you start to feel positive, you don't have that empathy coming from the outside world coming in, but you can, generate from the inside out. That's a way better way to go in about your day. But yeah, stop being a victim. That's a big topic.
Huge topic. I really appreciate your realistic approach, and obviously it comes from years of working with schools and students and adults. So thank you for all that. As we go through the interview, we are going to get at some more practical strategies. So let's spend a little bit more time, I guess, on the definition area. Where does bullying typically take place? So let's talk about place, but let's also look, what does the data tell us about the profile of bullies? Who? And like you're sharing, we've all gone through it probably on both sides, but what's typical on the where and the who?
All right. I'll start with the who, if you don't mind. I'll start with how bullying starts, and then I'll get into the where we can find it. Theory says bullying starts somewhere between 3 and 4 years old. And you're saying to yourself, well, 3 and 4 years old? No way. Well, hear me out. Let's say I'm in a daycare and I'm playing with this red ball. I'm playing by myself. I'm doing my own business. I'm having the most amount of fun a kid could possibly have with that ball. And another kid, we'll call him Jeff. Jeff comes in and he says, Alain, can I have that ball? I want to play with other. Of course, I say, well, I'm having the ball right now. I'm playing with it right now. I'm having a lot of fun. I'd like to keep it if you don't mind. Obviously, Jeff doesn't like it to be, being pushed back and being said no from a peer, right? I'm not a teacher. I'm somebody that age. He feels rejected. So with negative emotions, he kind of feel bad about it and he reacts and he pushes me. Now, Alain falls on the floor. I kind of drop the ball while I fall. Jeff picks it up right away. I press pause on my story because the teacher's gonna see that. He's gonna get in trouble because you can't push your friends and so on. So I'll get back the ball. He'll go in somewhere and he's gonna get talked to and so on. Even if he does get the negative repercussion, it doesn't do anything. First off, he just realized the first thing. If he can push me or be violent with me, he's going to get exactly what he wants, even though he felt rejection and even though I said no to him. So I fast forward the story a couple of hours, couple of days, couple of weeks. Little Alain's playing with that ball again, having the most amount of fun he could possibly have. Jeff comes back and says, hey, Alain, can I get that ball? Alain remembers what he did last time. He hurt me. I cried. I didn't like that at all. I'm kind of scared of you because whenever I say no, I get pushed back and I feel pain. So you know what? I'm going to give you the ball. I'll say I'll find myself another game. Now, little Jeff just realized the second thing. If he can find a way in order for little Alain to be scared of him, he's going to get exactly what he wants. He's not going to get a no from me, and he didn't push me, so the teacher didn't see anything, so he doesn't get in trouble. And if he doesn't get in trouble, he's doing the right thing. So he's bypassing rejection, going straight to the I'm being confident in myself. So we all want to find ways in order to not feel rejection, and we all want to find ways and feel confident in ourselves. And if we don't show our kids in ways to do it, they'll find it by themselves. So this it's not a bad thing. It's just a normal game, but that's how it starts. So somewhere between 3 and 4. Now, you asked me another question. You asked me, where do we find it most? Well, if you would have spoke, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I would have said probably schools or outside the schools. Because whenever a kid says or does something to another kid, well, if I'm in school, I'm going to get busted, right? People are going to see. So I don't want that, especially the adults. I don't want that because I don't want to get in trouble because I don't want to be a bully. We never see ourselves as bullies, right? So if that happens, I'll slowly move towards place in the school where nobody finds me. Maybe it's in the hallways while everybody else is in class, right? Maybe it's in changing rooms. Maybe it's in walking to or from the house. Maybe it's in the bus in the back. Because the other students, well, they're bystanders. As long as they're not doing anything, they're saying, yes, I agree, I support the action that's being done, right? Even though they're saying to themselves, that doesn't look like any fun, physically speaking, where they're not doing anything, they're letting the situation happen. So their body's saying, I agree to this. We all think it's funny. We all think that that person deserves it. I'm stepping back and I'm not taking part of it. So that's the communication. So that makes for the sake of this podcast, I'll say bully, but we understand that the goal of my speech is to separate the person from the action, right? When I say a bully, I certainly would not want somebody to understand that I'm pointing a finger on a specific student, right? The goal is not to define them as bullies, but to define the action of the word as bullying, and they've done something that doesn't make them a bad person. The action is a bad action, but the person can play a completely different thing. I'll say for the sake of this podcast, a bully, but it's two completely different things. So the bully for this situation feels comfortable, feels powerful because everybody else is seeing and nobody else is stopping me. So everybody agrees. And the victim feels like they're alone because nobody's helping me. So they must agree. So I'm me against the world, and the bully sees we're all against you, right? So that's how socially they feel. So they'll find ways in order for the adults to not see it. Whenever they can't find the ways, they'll go in the park in their community, maybe after hours, and they'll come into, you wanted to kind of pass me the puck over here, a Canadian joke, right? You kind of gave me a way in to get into cell phone and social media. And to me, I'm kind of baffled by it because I understand that people would go there because there's a false sense of security. If I put something online, nobody's going to see me, right? Nobody's going to know, especially if I have a name that's not my own. So we can hide behind a mask, or there's a filter between me and the situation. And to me, that gives a whole bunch of power again in those bystanders. Because if ever a bystander sees something and they take snapshots, like screenshots of it, and they go see a principal or a school, like, you can't deny it. It's physical proof. And we're seeing more and more. If they're not doing anything with it, now they're encouraging the situation. They're taking videos, taking pictures, not doing anything with it. They're passing it along to other students. Now they're taking part of it. But if they're keeping it for themselves and they're going to see the school counselor and they show them the video, like, now they're doing something that's active. There's a difference between a passive bystander and an active bystander. And that's, what do you do with that type of information? It doesn't need to be right now, because as a bystander, whenever we hear something, we kind of get into a state called shock, right? We kind of freeze up and we don't know what to do with it. But if ever time goes by and you say, you know what, that wasn't right, it kind of sticks with me. I kind of feel bad. Take whatever information you got with your cell phone and go and tell something to someone, right? Ironically speaking, I was asked to speak on media on a situation that happened in the school. And as soon as I got in front of the media joint, they said, hold on, Alain, we have fresh news, a new video. And that video was something that preceded the first one I was asked to weigh on. And that kind of gave me an introduction on, now you understand the second video a lot more. But that was done on bystanders. They was all filmed with other students, right? So they have with their hands the power to fix a lot of things that happens in their schools within their own little world, right? And it's with themselves. That's such a powerful tool, and everybody's scared of it. But it depends on what they do with it. If they act accordingly, if they act as an active bystander, they're going to create such a positive presence. It's going to be remarkable. But if they don't do anything with it, the victim's going to feel that much more rejected by society, right? Or their version of society, which is in that school.
I appreciate that description about the active bystander. And I know later in our chat, we'll have you talk more about how people can be more active and positive and constructive. So one takeaway I have so far is bullying can happen a lot of different places and a lot of different people. But I do wonder, are there circumstances in students' lives when it can lead to more bullying behaviors? Are there things that could be happening in the home, in the school, that in general could lead to individuals having more bullying behavior?
You're saying if something happens at home that could justify the way they act at school? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not justify, but could be the seeds to lead students to find ways to want to feel more powerful, to want to take out maybe their anguish at home, which is so sad. We take it out on others, not just from home, wherever it is. I'm wondering, is there any information on that?
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to say is something that I think there's no theories, and maybe there is literature that backs me up, but this is something that I see and understand from going, because whenever I go in schools, I roughly go into about 200 schools every school year. So I don't have a video, I have a snapshot, right? And after that snapshot, I kind of stay with the teachers and the social workers and the principals, and I talk to them. And they'll pretty much all tell me the same thing. Like, whenever I speak, I always ask them to stay on the sides and not in the back, right? Because I want them to look and to see how the kids react. And I always tell them within that 60-minute window, you're going to know exactly what question to ask to what kid, because their body's going to tell them what they're feeling. And it's extremely hard. If I can do it within a few minutes, I can know exactly who are the potential victims, who are the potential bystanders, and who are potential, like I said, bullies. And it's obvious to me, having a snapshot of that school of a few minutes and a few hours. So a teacher that goes and works with these kids for a whole school year, 10 months, it's obvious. We all know these kids, and they all tell me the same thing. It starts from home. I mean, we all know that quote, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It always happens. And I'm not saying, well, if your kid was ever doing and saying something bullying that could be defined as bullying, it's your fault. It's not necessarily, right? But they saw it somewhere. They felt it somewhere. And I'll say this, parenting is only hard for the good ones. It's extremely easy to put your kid in front of a TV set or Nintendo and have them play for 8 hours. The TV is a very, very, very good babysitter. It can have a positive role, but it can have a very negative role if you just put parenting. You're supposed to ask yourself a whole bunch of questions. You're supposed to end your day. You know what? I'm tired of being an adult right now. I can't wait to be a kid. You're supposed to be there's a different kind of tiredness that kind of resides with you. But you need to go out your way. You need to have that. So it's easy to have your kids, and your kids are sponges. And if ever you talk to your wife or husband and you yell a lot and you're not patient with your spouse or significant other or your kids, they're going to learn that pretty quickly. I was sent a picture of, I have two boys, 4 and 7, and the 4-year-old. My wife sent me a picture. I was in Calgary and in Fort McMurray last week, and she sent me a picture. He has a stool, and he was eating a banana. But I always eat bananas, and I put a little peanut butter on it with a knife, and I eat and then I put more. He was doing the exact same thing. He never did it, but he saw me doing it, and he was doing it that morning. And he was like, she took a picture, was like, "Are you proud of your son now?" Right? But he didn't invent that. He saw that. I eat that every morning, right? They're acting like my wife always says, be careful how you talk to me or you talk to your mother. They're taking notes. They're going to do it the exact same way they're going to talk to their wives, the exact same way they're going to talk to me, the exact same way you talk to your mother. But I mean, if you don't watch it, I mean, they'll get positive or negative or right in the middle. They'll get everything. They'll do it elsewhere to somebody else. But yeah, I strongly think it comes from home, but hey, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think that it's really important for all adults to consider their role modeling status in any situation. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for, like you said, they're sponging, they're soaking it up. And we just need to really be mindful of how we're treating other people, not just at home, but at school as teachers, administrators, and so on. So, what suggestions do you have for how we can improve our ability to notice bullying behavior around us?
All right. Oh, that's a great question. I'll answer it two ways. I'll answer it as a parent and I'll answer it as a teacher, all right? Because I got a lot to say on both. As a parent, you need to find situations where you can do something with your kids. Like everybody's doing the exact same thing. Like I was talking about karate. I still remember to this day that 3 or 4 month span that my dad enrolled himself in. The kid, adult, like mom and dad could do karate with their kids. He had a white belt and I had a green belt. I was play fighting with dad, but it wasn't on his terms. It was on my terms now because I was better at it. And I still remember, like, and I was a kid. My dad doesn't really particularly like hockey, but I used to love hockey cards. And I used to like Mario Lemieux right now and I never met the man, but I still have cards. I mean, I have too many Mario Lemieux cards and I used to collect them. And I would get like $5 every week to do in my bed and my chores. And I would take that $5 on Saturday morning. He would bring me to the card shop and he would buy the exact same thing. He would match my $5, meaning he would buy the exact same thing I would. So we would have two binders. And whenever we got home, we opened it. We did this big half hour, 45 minutes of playing with her, but we did something together. And the minute I had something on my mind or I have something to say, I would go to my dad because he created so much confidence in just doing something else out of being a dad. He was being something on my equal because we were both doing the exact same thing. I see all the time when I go to the park with my boys, I see like the parents are on the bench and they're fiddling with their phones. I understand. I get it. We're all tired. We all want that mental break. I want to see parents that are on all fours playing in the sand, playing in the snow. You're supposed to have something that's being done by everybody at the same time. And whenever you find those situations, you're going to create confidence from your kid towards you. And whenever that something happens, they'll feel comfortable to go and talk to you. And even though it doesn't make any sense in their mind or in their emotional system, they'll try to verbalize something and for you to, clear some things for them, right? And sometimes they just need to talk to someone. That's it, right? They just need a confident shoulder in order to, and that's it, right? And that's what you should look for. And you just look at you, like all week I was gone. And whenever I came back, my kid loves video games and all he wanted is to play, but he didn't want to play video games. He wanted to play with dad. That was it. And I was tired. I took the red eye. I was tired. I had a whole bunch of bags. I had piles of laundry to do and I was trying to do chores to get some pressure off of my wife who was by herself doing her work and raising two kids. But so I was trying to figure, but all he wanted is my attention and to do something with him. I said, you know what? I'm sorry. I'll take a couple of minutes and I'll play video games. He was so happy. He sat on my lap for about an hour and a half. He didn't want to sit beside me. He wanted to cuddle like that. If I talk to young parents, when I was in university, I did a study on skin to skin. Whenever I just was a dad, my first year, I don't think I wore a shirt at home. All I had was that kid on me. That skin to skin, that's the first type of communication you'll have with your parents and or your kids. Do that skin to skin thing as much as possible. I can't stress it enough. Plus, my second kid, I was pretty much stopped because we were in the pandemic. Dad had a 2-year off stretch. Like as a parent, you don't get that as a dad, right? You get 2 months and you're happy with it. But I had a 2-year span. That kid is so much daddy, you wouldn't believe it. But I do that skin to skin. That's going to create a barrier in order for them to have confidence in you. So that's the one thing as a parent. And as a teacher, the way we do it is, and I know you're going to say, I have a lot of things on my head, a lot of things on my plate. I'm doing something else. But as a teacher, you should, let's say you have, I'm sure there's a lot of different answers to this, but let's say you have 25 kids in your class. Every week or twice a week, you should come up to a random kid in your class and you say, hey, Audrey, can you come and see me whenever it's dinner time? I need to talk to you. How are you going to feel, Audrey? You're going to say, oh, what did I do wrong? You're going to probably stress out because the teacher wants to talk to me. And whenever they come to your, like I say office, not the office, it's the class, you close the door, say, no, I just wanted to know you. What's up? What are you? Who are you? Just 15 minutes. That's all it takes. And all of a sudden you figure out that little Audrey loves horses. And at some point throughout the year, you'll find a documentary on these specific, I don't know what. You'll say, hey, Audrey, there's a documentary on Netflix. You should watch it. It's absolutely amazing. I think you're going to love. You're creating ways. And if you do that twice a week, and after you go through those 25 kids, you go around, you should do that all year. And that moment, you're going to create space where these kids are going to have confidence in you. And whenever something happens at home, they didn't sleep well, their cat died, and something, they're going to come to you and they're going to know that you're going to listen to them, and they're going to know what platform they can go through in order to verbalize certain things, even though it's very hard to verbalize. So if you create those barriers, you're gonna find yourself in the class where everybody kind of knows you as a person, not necessarily as a teacher, and you're gonna know specifically your class as a human being instead of one whole, right? So if they do that, they're gonna have nice surprises.
I appreciate your fundamental belief in building relationships and connections. And as we know from the parenting side and the teacher side, that opens the door for these conversations, for students to come up and say, here's what's happening in my life. I'm troubled. How and what can I do about it? So I really appreciate that. So let's look at whether it's the classroom or the parents or on the playground. What changes in children's behavior can mean they are being bullied? What are some tells that show maybe some bullying is happening in the lives of students?
Right. There, at first, everybody tells them, go see an adult, go see a parent, go see a teacher. And that's all fun and games until you kind of think, well, that emotion, that situation that I'm about to tell, they're just jokes. Everybody's laughing. I'm the only one who's not laughing. So maybe I'm the odd one out. Maybe I'm the weird one. I'm supposed to be laughing, right? So it's kind of hard. So it takes a lot of time for them kids to go see an adult. And by the time they go, that emotion kind of climax, right? It kind of mutated into a bigger emotion that's even harder to verbalize or harder to feel or harder to understand. So I always say that the victims, the quicker the better, right? The quicker we go see an adult. An adult was not gonna stop bullying like we cut a cucumber or a banana, right? It's not a definite ending. It's a process. But the quicker we go, the quicker we change the ending, the quicker we gonna have a different result. And it's not easy, but it's gonna be easier to verbalize that emotion. So the quicker the better. And they do realistically is They go see an adult way too late, and by the time they get there, the adult's going to do one of two things. They're going to say, well, don't worry about it. They're just being mean. You're over exaggerating, but they're going to minimize it. Or they're going to say, you're being bullied. Let's go to the school. So maybe that kid was not ready to go to school with mom and dad with as a gorilla say, you know what, my kid's being bullied, right? Maybe they're not there in their development, or they're in their wanting to stop the situation. Maybe they got different answers, but that's what typically happens. So the minute they see that their trusted adult minimizes it or doesn't react the proper way, they'll exclude themselves. They're just going to go in their room and they're going to not want to talk to anybody, socially speaking, and at home. And as a parent or as a teacher, whenever we see a kid that's normally with certain groups or having a lot of fun, they're not smiling anymore, they're not having a lot of fun, they're getting short-tempered, or they're excluding themselves from a situation, or maybe they go in their rooms, they don't want to talk. As a parent, as a teacher, what we do, we ask questions, we become this we become this interviewer, right? But we're asking questions because as a parent, you kind of know that something's wrong with your kid. You don't know what, but the dad in you kind of says, you know what, something's not feeling right. But you go and you ask the questions. You become a questionnaire. And that kid says, well, no, I don't want to answer these questions. Put your headphones in and turn around and they'll block. The more they block them, the more they're going to feel bad. They're going to want to parent. They're going to want to know. They're going to want to push. The more they push, they're going to push them away, right? So exclusion or secluded, whenever a kid doesn't smile, gets short-tempered, he doesn't want to answer questions anymore, he or she exclude themselves, they don't want to talk to anybody, those are signs where you should say, you know what, maybe something's wrong. But the head's not going to talk. Your gut's going to talk way before. You're looking for signs with your eyes to feed your brain, but you're going to know, like that mother-father feeling, right? You're just going to know.
Yeah.
Listen to that. It doesn't lie.
So let's imagine that we've recognized a potential victim of bullying or a situation with bullying in it. So, thinking about students, teachers, even administrators and parents, and then the greater community, do you have suggestions how those various populations could and should, in your view, respond to bullying once they've identified it?
Yeah, I love you guys' questions. All right. The first thing we need to realize, like I said earlier in the podcast, we need to separate the person from the actions, right? The minute you say to a kid, you're a bully, they're going to say, no, I'm not. And they don't want their parents to hear that. That's the worst. But they're going to feel attacked. Their core is going to feel attacked. So they're going to say, well, everybody else is on my case. You're just going to aim me for no reason. So they're going to be targeted. So they're going to feel like they're victims. They're going to define them. They're going to feel like they're victims. So first, we need to separate. No, you're not a bully. You're not a bad person. I just want you to realize that whatever actions you did is bad, but we can amend this, right? We can make it right. So the minute we separate and say, oh, I'm not a bad person. Okay, I want to feel like I didn't want to hurt them, right? That wasn't the goal, but we can show them how to say sorry, and that's going to create that much of a positive difference. That's all fun and games. And the way we should do it, I have this fun game at home. And as a parent, you can steal this game, or as a teacher, you can steal this game. And it works incredibly well. It works almost too well. About a year ago, so my kids were, 3 and 6. I said to myself, I want to test the theory, because I test my theories on my kids, right? I'm not going to say something that I didn't test it on my own kids, right? So whenever my kids, I'm never going to go to the school and say, hey, my kid's getting bullied. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to deal with them personally. I introduced this game and I said, I bought a hula hoop, dollar store. It's orange. And it's the only hula hoop that I don't, when you have kids and you kind of close the house before you go to bed, that's the only toy that I don't move. If it's on the sofa, I leave it there. If it's on the floor, I'll leave it. I never touch it. Like they'll move it around. Unless it's blocking a cabinet door, I'm not moving it. And the goal is, whatever my kids say to me when they're in the hula hoop, they're never going to get in trouble. And I want to unstigmatize the word consequence, because whenever I say you're going to have consequences, tell you what, you're thinking negative. You're going to have the negative consequences. But if you go to the gym twice a week, guess what? You're going to have consequences. you're going to get in shape. If you eat well, you're going to get consequences. You're going to feel good about yourself. You go to bed early, you're going to have, so consequences are like a result, not a negative thing, right? So, but when I was a kid, I always have that negative connotation on that word. So I said, well, if you say something in that, there's going to be consequences, but they're going to be positive. And within the first, I'll say 36 hours, I was having a dinner with my family, and my kids were downstairs playing, and all I hear is, and my youngest kind of starts crying and starts yelling. I said, I opened the door. So what's going on? And my oldest kind of goes upstairs and he's running, right? And I said, Eddie, what's going on? What's going on? And he says, one moment. And he's looking for the hula hoop and he finds it. He steps into it and he says, I hit Leo. So now as a dad, you can't laugh, right? Because it's kind of cute, but that's the game. So I kind of take a step back and say, well, why'd you hit him? And he said, well, he stole my car. I understand now. Well, that kind of can be frustrating. So kind of my old youngest comes up and he's crying. So, okay, I'll listen to both sides. And should you react? And then he said, I shouldn't have went up to tell you. You would have taken Leo's cars. And, you didn't have to go through that. And he said, I'm sorry. Do you accept his apology? And that was all good. And then I said, well, I said to you that there was going to have positive recognition, right? Positive recognition, a good way out, right? I was going to, say something good. And I said, I don't have any dessert. I told you this, but now I'm going to ask you, what type of dessert do you want? So the kid said, well, we want Smarties flavored ice cream. I said, let me go to the store and get you Smarties flavored ice cream. So I get them ice cream, even though he hit the youngest one, right? The goal is not to be a policeman. The goal is to make them realize that they reacted. They could have done something else in order to make the same situation a lot better. So he reacted. You know what? I said, sorry, I feel bad. I should have done this. It's perfect. I don't need to be a policeman. He did it by himself. So he went through it. He got the positive recognition with it. And everybody was okay. You can do that in your classroom. And you need to show your kids and your students ways in order for them to realize themselves that they're saying and doing something wrong. And the way we do, and whenever they realize it, you need to give them a positive reinforcement. They need to, you know what? It's human to react a certain way. And then you think about what you said you did. I should have done this. We do it as adults. We always do something and say something. You know what? I kind of feel bad. I wish I could take that back. But you know what? If you do it as long enough, you're going to maybe bite twice on your tongue, but you're showing them ways in order for them to realize that they can do it by themselves. That's emotional maturity, right? They call it emotional intelligence. I don't like the word intelligence. I like the word introspection, right? You understand that feelings are going through your body. Put a word on them and realize where they come from and what they're telling you, right? Because your emotions are talking to you. You need to realize what your emotions are saying in order for them, but you need to give them a name. You need to define them. And first you need to realize them. So in emotional understanding of what's going through your body. I am fascinated with that.
So taking a look at how to proactively take steps to prevent bullying, you've really kind of answered this question. Educational services like you're doing, teaching life skills, opening pathways, building relationships so that students, young people feel like they have adults in their lives who really care for them. And one of the big themes I'm picking up on, well, you just said it right there, introspection. Learn about how your thinking works. And then as best we can, especially with early childhood and elementary, helping grow that social awareness and empathy and other character strengths are all strategies that, in my mind, are going to lessen the potential for individuals to make bad choices, whether it be verbal or physical. So is there anything else you would like to add to the prevention of bullying, the strategies that people could take?
Thank you for opening that door for me. Whenever I go in schools, I always put a lot of work on. I have 3 steps that kids need to take in order for them to go and seek help. Because whenever they do, they kind of go and yelling with all of those negative emotions, and the teachers, they don't respond well to this. So there's the best moment in the story. There's the best time in the day. There's the best way. There's no bad moments and bad ways, right? Whenever they feel like it's time to go, they have the right answer. But the best moment is, like I said earlier, the quicker the better. The best time is when, don't wait till the teachers are working or supervising recess or the hallways or the cafeteria. Leave the recess, walk into the school, calm yourself down, and go see a teacher that's doing some prep work or some correcting that's alone here in the classroom. No teacher, if a kid knocks on their door and say, hey, I need to talk to you, they're not going to say, you're bothering me. They're going to say, what's going on? What's happening to you, right? And if they can't listen to them, they're not done talking. They're saying, you know what? Come with me. We'll go talk about the school counselor. Come back to see me in 15 minutes. I'll have, like, they'll create time within that schedule for them to listen and to have the conversation that they deserve to have, right? So wait till the best time. And the best way is, I always say that the kids should find themselves a safe word. It could be anything, but I kind of have my own safe word and say, do you have a minute? And I usually give them like little bracelets, and that code is like, if a teacher hears a kid saying, hey, do you have a minute? You put your pen and your fork down, you close the computer, you turn around towards that kid and you give them 100% your attention, because that kid is not saying, I'm feeling something easy to explain. That kid's actually saying, you know what? I don't know who I can talk to. I'm feeling all of those negative emotions. I have trouble sleeping at night. I'm having nightmares. I try to talk to mom and dad, but maybe I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Maybe I can't define it properly. Maybe they don't understand. I don't know who I can talk to. But if you listen to me, I think I'm going to feel good with it. I think you're a good person that could listen and bring clarity for me. So do you have a minute? That safe word works extremely well in every school that I go to, and they kind of rob and duplicate what I do, right? If they get that idea and they implement it, kids will do that the minute. Like, kids would come up to me as soon as I'm done and they'll say, hey, Mr. Alain, do you have a minute? And I'll like, they need to talk to me. They want to tell me, you know what, whatever situation, I felt that way. They want to talk to me, and it's important for me to listen, right? It's not something that's being done in recess that's going to be over in 2 minutes, right? So that safe word creates a platform where everybody feels safe. If I say it as a kid, I know somebody's gonna listen to me. And if I hear it as an adult, I need to stop what I'm doing and give that kid all of my attention, because this is something that he or she needs from me right now. So I can wait for my correction. I can wait for my planning, and I need to do this now. So that safe word is huge for me to try to implement in schools.
I love it. It's great to have a system that everybody knows about and that kids are comfortable using. So, Alain, these are some really great strategies, and I love the humanity of what you're talking about. You know, there's a side of it that you alluded to earlier that somehow the humanity gets taken out of, and that's social networking. So I'm wondering if we could take a dive into that for a bit, and you can help us think about what can be done in schools and in maybe students' personal lives to decrease online bullying behavior.
Well, students and kids are, you're not going to prevent it. You're not going to stop it. We can tell them not to go, but they're not going to listen. And we need to realize that they're right, right? As an adult, as a school, or as a parent, you need to know in and out whatever your kids are using as a platform. You need to understand. You need to educate yourself. You need to be on those platforms, and you need to use them. Like I always said, I don't know. Like, I'm not big on Instagram. I'm not big on TikTok. I downloaded both of those things and I started to play around with it, because whenever a kid says, you know what, I'm on TikTok and I'm doing this, I need to know exactly what they're doing. I need to know why are they using it, what's fun about it, and what can be not fun about it, and how can all of those predators use that, right? And I'm talking predators. I'm not talking, kidnapping. I'm talking about how can I impose bullying on those platforms, right? Is it a chat? Is it pictures? How is it, right? I heard a story the last 2 years, and I heard it about 4 or 5 times, and they're all about the same story. Is kids will create a page, mostly on Instagram, on Alain, or on the fake name, fake everything. And they'll create memes and everybody can post them, but I don't know that page exists, right? So they'll create memes, they'll create funny, they'll chat about it, they'll bully, but I don't know about it. One of the bad ones was this little girl. She couldn't hide at school anymore because everybody was looking at her and everything. She felt alone, so she started to, during dinner time, during her break, she would go to this little corner store and just eat by herself there. And they kind of went on this blog and told everybody, hey, we're going to follow her there. And they kind of, one of the girls picked a fight with her, and they had about 50 to 60 people filming it all in her circle. And whenever I got into that school, that one situation happened. And that happened on the Thursday. And it turns out I was going on a Monday at that school. It just happened that way because the school, they don't call me, can you come tomorrow? They call me, can you come in 2 or 3 months, right? And I walked in the school principal kind of said hi and say, Alain, we need to talk. That's never a good thing, right? I went to his office and he showed me the video and he says, I didn't take the video, right? That's what's being posted online. And I had chills. Like, she was trying to run and the people would push her back into the circle so she could get, beat up. Like, we're talking assault now. We're not talking bullying, right? That's the result of bullying. But like I said, whenever I say, like, those phones can be such a powerful tool, it can help somebody, it can destroy somebody. It depends on who's the person holding the phone. And it turned out that one of the kids kind of felt bad and he went to the principal and he showed the principal the video, I'll say minutes or a few moments after the situation. So the principal went out and stopped whatever was happening, and the cops were in the situation now, like the whole shebang. But those phones can be such a powerful tool. It depends on who's using it and how they use it. But that's a story that I hear more now than I did at the beginning of my career. When I started in 2008, 2009, you didn't hear about that, right? We had those flip phones and it started. But now with those powerful tools, we don't have any more flips, right? It's all big screen. Everybody can take pictures and social media can be used in order to hurt somebody pretty bad. So that's how they do it on Instagram, right? I'm trying to get a hold of those new apps. But yeah, so as a parent, as a school teacher, you need to know these applications. You need to know how they run. You need to educate yourself. You need to read. You need to know them in and out. So whenever kids come to you and they talk to you, you need to know more about that website or that app than they do, right? So that's the one thing I should tell adults. If your kid my kid's starting to play Fortnite. And I said, I don't know. I need to play Fortnite because they have a chat. I assist them in that thing, right? They can talk to them. He's only 7. I'm thinking, I don't know that game. I don't like to play games. I don't own. My only thing I had was a Nintendo, the gray ones, like the Mario Brothers 3 that's the only one I had. I didn't even have the Super Nintendo. I had nothing. But I need to inform myself in those Switch and those computers. I need to play them. If he's playing it, I'm playing it, right? So I need to know a little bit about it, at least, for us to talk and for me to guide him, right? So, yeah.
Okay, so you can't really stop it. Be informed and recognize the potential of it is, and step in and develop that relationship ahead of time so that when you step in, they're going to trust you. And
Yeah.
okay, excellent. Can you perhaps suggest some proactive, empowering kind of ways that our youth can highlight positive social behaviors?
I work with this private school. I'm not going to say the name, but it's in Longueuil, like in the south of Montreal. And I've been working with them for like 12 years now. And in the first few years, I was in one of the gyms and I was waiting for the kids to come in. And right outside the door was I'll say grade 1, 2s, like they were really small. And one of the girls wore it looked like a princess dress. Like I have boys. I don't know the princesses, but it was like a princess. And one of the other girls of her classmates, she came to that girl right close to me and she said, wow, that's such a pretty dress. You look lovely in it. And that girl changed, like, and she felt like, she felt elevated. She floated for the rest of that day just to have a peer say something nice to her and complimented her. That I'm sure that, like, to wear a dress like that, you need to have a happy day. You can't, it's very hard to have a hard day when you're wearing a princess dress, for one. But that kind of made it that much bigger when a peer said, whenever your mom and dad says something to you, or your spouse or your husband, you say, you know what, you look good today. Nah, thank you. But when somebody else said that, you know what, you look nice, that is out of this world. That creates, your husband and wife, they're supposed to think that you're lovely, you're good looking. When somebody else says it, oh my God. So, that whole pass it forward thing, whenever you give a compliment to somebody, whenever you give, just to say, it's, when I was a kid, I used to go to Tim Hortons, like in typical Canadian, right? Again, I used to
Woohoo!
pay for the person in the back of me. And I would just try to make them feel good, right? Just to try to get, it's a coffee. It's $2 back then. It was probably less, but I would take the thing. I would put quarters, because I was a swimmer, and there was vending machines, and I used to bring quarters and put them in like, we had paid telephones. I used to put quarters in those machines because I knew that kids, whenever they were done their swimming lessons, they would go and they would check if there was any coins. And whenever a kid found a coin, they felt rich, like there was non-belief. It's a quarter, right? What do you do with your quarters, David? We hate quarters. It's something that's clunky, but if you give it to them, they feel like it's rich. Just that big pay it forward thing. Give something positive to somebody else and watch your world change. So whenever a kid kind of feel excluded, you don't need to be his friend or her friend. You don't need to bring him in for a pajama party. Just give him a compliment. Give him something to look forward to, something good. Have a conversation with them. A compliment can create so much a big difference in somebody's day. We underappreciate that. But yeah, I always have that little girl's face in my mind. It kind of hit really home to me, and I keep having that example in my mind. But yeah, you want to create a positive difference? Give a compliment. Tell something nice to somebody else and see how it changes their world.
I really appreciate that. So I'm going to make a pitch as a counselor that our guidance programs, our wellness programs, our SEL programs teach a lot of these life skills about how to interact with others. On one hand, know yourself, but also, like I was saying earlier, learn about perspectives. And from our world of international schools, I bet you most schools have nice orientation programs, hopefully that are ongoing, not just the first week for new students. And I bet many schools out there have campaigns, have structures on how students are going to welcome new people in and then support them throughout the year on the analog side, the face to face, but also in the virtual world, that they'll have systems in place to celebrate people, the power of that. I'll add, our listeners probably know about Common Sense Media. There are other organizations out there that provide full curriculum on how to build in that understanding of how, when you're using social media, like you were saying earlier, you might think that you're not, people don't know who you are and such. But when you like something or you make maybe a critical comment to someone's Instagram post, how negative that is, but how to reverse it, just as we're saying, to make it a proactive, how do we build people up? How do we make them feel like they're a part of our community? And that sense of belonging, which is so powerful. All right, let's move on to, I think we're at a good spot here. We've covered so much. This has been so helpful. Is there anything else you would like to share?
As an educator, you're going to go to university. You're going to have degrees. You're going to learn how to bring any kid from point A to point B, intellectually speaking, and you're going to run at some point in your career into a situation where the kid was bullied, and you're going to have parents knocking at your door as a classroom or as a school, and they're going to say, well, my kid says he's being bullied. It's you guys' fault. He's being okay at home. He doesn't want to go to school. You need to fix this. And you need to realize that their parents are right. They're not saying it's your fault, you need to change it. They're saying something's wrong with my kid. I ask him questions, I ask her questions, and they exclude me. They don't talk to me. I don't know. But in my heart, my father or my mother of a heart, I can't, I know that there's something wrong and I can't tell. Please help me out. You're an educator. You know, you're a professional. Please help me out. They're going to be angry, but they're going to say, it's your problem. You fix it. But really, they're seeking out for help. They're saying, you know what? I don't know who I can talk to as an adult. I don't know I can reach out to as an adult. I don't know. I can't get to him. I can't fix it. Please help me make my kid smile again. That's what they're asking for. And they're right. And it's not your fault. You're probably going to feel helpless at points. You're going to try different things and they're not going to work. And you're maybe going to go at bed at night. You're going to say, what did I do? What could I done? What did I do? And you're going to take it on you. It's not your fault. My sympathies. You're an educator. You're there to bring a kid from point A to point B, intellectually speaking. And they're asking you to fix, and it's impossible to fix an emotional problem with an intellectual solution. And that's what you're trying to do. It's impossible. I mean, we all see the situation where they put posters on the walls. They have pink t-shirts, and I agree with the pink t-shirts. I agree with them. They're bracelets, and they'll have themes, and they'll have parades, and hopefully it stops. Hope is the most unuseful emotion in the human catalog. Whenever you feel hope, it's telling you whatever you just did or said, it's not working. If it does, it's just by chance. It's impossible to think that a parade can stop bullying. The only thing a parade does is create a platform at which we can have a debate on a subject where there's no debate. No parent wants their children to go into school where there's a lot of bullying. We all agree with it. We all want to stop it, right? But we create these situations where we can have debates and talks where it leads us nowhere. Like I said, it's impossible to fix an emotional problem with an intellectual solution. We need to fix it with an emotional solution. And that's it. But it's not your fault. That's what university does. It creates a platform in which you can teach your kids certain subjects, but it doesn't show you the emotional part of it. It just shows you the intellectual part of it. But you're going to be asked to do much more. And these parents, they don't know who they can turn to. So they're going to turn to you, and they're right. And unfortunately, you're probably not well equipped for that. I'm sorry about that. My sympathies.
Well, you've given some ways that teachers can proactively build relationships with kids, safe word, building kids up, and so on. You've really given some strategies that teachers and schools can use. So even though you ended on a bit of a sorry note, you've given us some tools that teachers can use. So thank you for that. And, you were telling us before we started recording that you are all over Canada now. You've broken into the English speaking schools where you began in Quebec in the French speaking schools, but you've really expanded, and to the extent that you almost need a clone of yourself in order to stay on top of all the speaking engagements that you're being invited to. However, we really love the international community. So I'm just going to throw out there that I have a hope that maybe this show will be the impetus for you to go global after this.
That would be
So
amazing.
please tell our listeners how they could follow you or get in touch with you if they'd like to hear more about recognizing, responding to, and preventing bullying.
The website is called alainpelletier.ca. Now it's a French name. So maybe you guys can help me out and put a link in the description somewhere. I'll send it to you as soon as we're done.
Absolutely.
So alainpelletier.ca. There's my personal email. There's my personal phone number in there. You got all the descriptions. They'll have a whole bunch of videos, and they can find me there extremely easily. If you put Alain Pelletier bullying, I'm the first one that pops on Google. So that's the easiest way to find me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time. We've gone over our usual time because we were really enjoying the conversation. Again, your passion is just very infectious, and it's so evident that you love what you're doing and you really are a master in this area. Thank you again so much.
Merci, Alain.
Ooh, bravo, David.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege for me to talk to you about what I do within schools. I really had a fun time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today on Educators Going Global.
You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and all the other usual suspects.
Please subscribe, like us, and leave a review on Apple and Spotify, and let your teaching friends know about us so we can grow our community.
Please reach out at educatorsgoingglobal@gmail.com and join our Facebook group, Educators Going Global, if you have ideas, comments, or wish to share a Going Global story of your own.
You can also find us on Instagram at Educators Going Global.
Please visit our website as well, www.educatorsgoingglobal.com. All our podcast episodes are on there by topic, along with blog posts, Going Global stories, and our ever-growing resource library. For now, this is Audrey
And David.
inviting you to travel
Teach
and connect with us.